In the name of the God who created us, in the name of the Christ who teaches us, in the name of the Spirit who journeys alongside us, welcome home, children of God. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Welcome to First Presbyterian Church this morning as we gather together as God's people in God's name. It is good to be here this morning. I welcome all of you here today. A couple of quick announcements. If you would please take a moment first and sign those blue friendship registers on the inside aisle and pass them down. We would appreciate it. This Tuesday, we are going to be providing lunch for students at Emmanuel. Is Kathy Wing in here? Thank you. Do we still need casseroles, or are we set?
Maybe a couple of vegetable type casseroles.
So if you're able to provide, even if you can't attend lunch, but if you can provide a vegetable casserole or vegetarian casserole of some kind, gluten-free if possible, 9 by 12, just see Kathy. We've got I think, most of that lined up. We'd love for you to join in lunch as well, but even if you can't do that, but you can help provide a casserole, it'd be very appreciated. So thank you. That's this Tuesday. Our next joining Sunday is going to be December the 15th. So if you have any interest in finding out more about membership at the church, please see Kathy or Dawn. I'm not sure if Dawn's here today. Or me. We'd be happy to talk to you about what that entails. Let's see. Hopefully, you'll stick around today after worship. We have our annual gratitude dinner, delicious meal downstairs prepared by your community life committee and a program to follow. So please make sure you stick around. I know several folks have announcements to make. If you all will come up here and use the mic for those, would appreciate that. We are live streaming this morning. Also, as they make their way up, I'll let you know today is second Sunday of the month, which means that our Everyone Counts goes to benefit ARM today. So ARM, Area Resource Ministry, right down the road, a block from us behind Eagles, helps provide food and other support for members of people in Carter County. It's a wonderful ministry. We've got folks volunteer there simply by showing up today. The fact that you came to church today means that we are giving $1 for every person sitting here this morning to ARM. But we do invite you to also participate in that act of worship by putting $1 or your offering in the plate as it goes around. But know that whether you put anything in the plate or not, the fact that you showed up at church this morning makes a tangible, real difference in the lives of people in this community. And for that, we are grateful. So let's see, I know I've got several folks, and we'll turn it over to y'all.
Hi, this is a reminder that next Sunday after the service until 3 p.m. we're having a workshop on resiliency. I know none of you have any stressors at all, but if you would happen to know someone who might have a few stressors in their lives, maybe you could attend and share for them. It'll begin at noon, and we're going to have a small luncheon provided by the Peacemaking Committee, and then the event will go on until 3 o'clock. It's led by 3 of the clinicians who are members of our congregation, one of whom I can't remember the name, Jennifer Paris Gardner and Mary Miller and Myra Wallace Elder. Yes, thank you. You know, no stress. Anyway, thank you. I hope you'll plan to stay next Sunday, November 17th after church. Thanks.
Hi everyone. Today, the youth would like to invite you all to play a couple of rousing games of bingo with us after the gratitude dinner. We have prizes that will be appealing to all ages, I can guarantee. We're going to have a good time. Please come.
And just a reminder about the women's retreat at Holston Camp next weekend, November 15th through 17th, $125. You get 4 meals. There are amazing presenters. I'm one of them. So if you are interested, some of the topics are creative writing as a spiritual practice, discovering your Enneagram type, caring for the caregiver, mindfulness hiking, and daily meditations. So I'm telling you, it's going to be a bumping weekend. You should totally come.
I have a prayer request. I have a friend in band who just lost his father. So if we could pray for his family, that would be nice. Ryan. I don't know his last name.
Good morning.
Good morning.
As you can see in the bulletin, the FPCe Family Thanksgiving. Several years ago, Waylon and I decided to do, it's called Friendsgiving. And we used to have it in our house for people that didn't have anywhere to go, didn't have any family, or just didn't want to cook. They could come to our house and eat. Well, we've outgrown our house. So we're going to have it in Martin Hall this year at 1 o'clock on Thanksgiving. Waylon and I will be supplying the ham and the turkey and dressing. And if you want to come, bring a side dish. Come, and you don't have to cook, you don't have to clean up. Just come and enjoy yourselves. If you have family, bring them. It's not just for our church either, it's for anybody. ETSU students, Milligan students, whoever wants to come can come and spend Thanksgiving with us here at 1 o'clock. Like I said, it's called Friendsgiving. If you'd like to come, contact me or Waylon. Let us know how many's coming, and we hope to see you then. Thank you.
Today's invitation to worship is by Rumi from Masnavi, Book 1, 599-607. Come, come, wherever you are, whoever you are, wanderer, whisperer, lover of leaving. It doesn't matter. Ours is not a caravan of despair. Come, even if you have broken your vow 1,000 times. Come yet again. Come, come.
We are
as the flute, and the music in us is from thee.
We are as the mountain, and the echo in us is from thee.
Who are we, O thou soul of our souls, that we should remain in being beside thee?
Our wind, whereby we are moved, and our being are of thy gift. Our whole existence is from thy bringing into being.
Our first hymn is hymn 401, Gather Us In.
Let's take a moment and share the peace of Christ with one another.
I'm fine, how are you?
Peace.
No, I hadn't brought I'm sorry, I missed it. I missed it.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Good morning, peace to you, brother.
Peace to you, so good to see you. Peace to you, honey, peace to you. Peace to you.
I'm embarrassed with you.
Let's give him a minute, you know, look at him out there.
Out there like a bunch of heads calculating all this shit. Peace to you, Jose. Peace to you, brother Bill. You're welcome.
We turn now to our time of meditation, a time of silence, a time of conscious rest in the midst of our lives, in the midst of this service filled with noble words and beautiful music, a time of silence. Our invitation to meditation this week, and if you like, a seed thought for the week, is not by ourselves alone, not for ourselves alone. When you meditate, when you individually meditate, or when we meditate, it can feel like an individual act. Your eyes are closed most often, you're sitting still, you've turned inward, and basically you're aware of your own inner world. You may be aware of other things, but basically that. It's not like collective prayer where we may hear everyone else's voices and it feels like a communal thing. So it can feel like you are meditating, or perhaps it feels like we in this room are. But what the teachers of all spiritual traditions have said, we alone are not meditating. When we meditate, life is meditating. That is not just a hallmark thought. That is not theology. You are a part of life. You are growing in the garden of God. And when you meditate, life is meditating. When you meditate, life is meditating through you, as surely as if you were a flower blossoming in the garden, we would say the garden is blossoming. And sometimes we think that when we meditate, we're meditating for ourselves. I'm stressed out, I want to be more at peace, or I'm upset and I want to be calm, or whatever it is. When you meditate, and when we meditate, we are always meditating on behalf of all life. It doesn't even matter whether you think that you are. You are. Because you are, we are a part of life. And to whatever degree you bring your world into greater balance, to whatever degree you attune more deeply to the source of wisdom and love and compassion and unselfishness and peace within you, you are bringing that into the world. All of life benefits from your meditation and from our meditations. So not by ourselves alone, not for ourselves alone. And with that, I invite us to turn to our time of meditation now, and to begin by closing our eyes and assuming a posture of meditation, because what we do with the body, we are doing with the mind. There is no distinction. And so as you're able, please sit erect and don't slump. You might even experiment with sitting forward in the pew a little bit. But if reclining is more comfortable for you, then please do recline. Sit tall. Sit with quiet dignity. Let your body come to rest and become calm and quiet. Notice its weight in the pew. Feel that sensation of weight in the pew. You might like to remember that that sensation of weight is caused by the gentle pull of Mother Earth's gravitational field on your body and the equally real, though much smaller, pull of your body's gravitational field on Mother Earth. That sensation of weight is you and our planet hugging. Let your mind settle into this moment. Our minds so often are tempest-tossed, preoccupied with what has been, or what will be, or what might be. The secret, the practice of all meditation is to be willing to be fully aware of what's happening right now and to let go for a while of all concerns about what has been or will be or might be. Those thoughts may arise. That's okay. Just let them come and go and settle into this moment. And so now in silence, settling deeper and deeper into the silence, let us meditate.
Matthew 11, 2 through 6. When Jesus came to Nazareth, where he had been raised, he went to the synagogue on the Sabbath day, as was his custom. He stood up to read, and the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was given to him. He unrolled the scroll and found the place where it was written, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because the Lord has anointed me to bring good news to the poor, to proclaim release to the captives, recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." And Jesus rolled up the scroll, gave it back to the attendant, and sat down. The eyes of all in the synagogue were fixed on him. Then he began to say to them, "Today this scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing." When John the Baptist heard in prison what Jesus was doing, he sent word by his disciples and said to him, "Are you the one who is to come, or are we to wait for another?" Jesus answered them, "Go and tell John what you hear and see. The blind receive their sight, the lame walk, the lepers are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the poor have good news brought to them. And blessed is anyone who takes no offense at me."
Simplicity is gain to know and to then be
Thank you, Susan, for reading this morning, and thank you, the choir. I love that piece, Appalachian Spring, the simple gifts. That's one of my favorites. Thank you all. Today, as you might know, is our annual Gratitude Sunday here at the church, and that means a couple of things for us here at First Presbyterian. First, it means that today is, hopefully at least, the last day of our 2019 stewardship campaign. So you can all breathe a collective sigh of relief. Make it through today. You probably don't have to endure another sermon from me about stewardship or pledging for almost an entire year. And second, it means that if you can just make it through worship this morning until noon today or so, you get to enjoy some of the best barbecue anywhere, lovingly prepared by the most attractive, engaging, and erudite preacher in all of Tennessee. And if anyone makes comments like, "I thought you made the barbecue, Brian," be warned, I have more stewardship sermons in the hopper I can pull out before next fall. Take heart. It is not just the folks listening to a sermon on stewardship that find it uncomfortable. Those of us who preach stewardship sermons don't usually count them among our favorite either. And part of it, admittedly, is that there seems to be this inherent conflict of interest, often unspoken, in me preaching to you about stewardship. I do believe that it is critically important practice that forces us to consider what it is we value and that challenges the predominant individualism and consumerism of our culture. But I also believe it's an important practice because it's how I get a paycheck every month. But it's not just stewardship that I think is such an uncomfortable topic for us. I think it's money in general. We live in a very money-obsessed world. Flip through a magazine or the morning paper, and half of what you read is advertisements. The top concern among Americans in our last election, according to the polls, that's the election that put Donald Trump into the White House, the top concern voiced by a majority of Americans in that election was the economy. In fact, if I were going to describe what our secular culture actually serves and worships, I think the answer would be the economy. And so part of our disconnect, I think, with church is that we come here to engage in questions of value. What is something worth? And most of the time, that's a question with an answer that comes in dollars. And while that makes sense for a lot of things, there are other things for which that kind of valuation doesn't work. What's a new car worth? $20,000. What's that forest worth? Well, in economic terms, it's not really worth anything, unless you want to cut it down and sell the timber or charge admission. And yet a forest is clean air, it's beauty, it's life, it's a precious ecosystem. Its worth is really hard to calculate. I've read before that it takes somewhere north of $250,000 to raise a child. Does that mean a child is worth $250,000? Of course not. How do you measure the worth of a precious, unique, sacred human child? So I think maybe that's why money talk is so uncomfortable in church. We have to talk about money because it is something that has tremendous importance in this world. And so if we're to say that God has nothing to do with money or economics, then we've written God out of a huge area of life. And that doesn't quite seem right. But on the other hand, we don't want the church to be as money obsessed and off-kilter as the rest of the world seems to be much of the time. Does that feel about right? So what is a church worth? What is this church worth? Well, if you look at our property insurance, it's worth about $1.5 million for the building. Is that what the church is really worth? Or 10% of income or whatever you might pledge this year? Is that what the church is worth? How do you measure the worth of something like this? In that reading from Matthew that Susan read for us a few minutes ago, we find John the Baptist languishing in prison. And he at least finds himself temporarily overcome by doubt. This Jesus that he baptized at the beginning of Jesus' ministry, this Jesus that John announced as the Messiah, he must not be doing what John thought he was supposed to do. Jesus somehow or another didn't fit the mold that John had in mind. And so John sends some people from his prison cell to ask Jesus, "Are you the one? Or should we wait for someone else?" I feel like there's a lot of angst in John's voice in raising that question. Have I wasted my life? Did I get it all wrong? It's a high-stakes question for John. But Jesus doesn't answer that question directly. He answers in a way that I think is maybe even more helpful to John, and maybe more helpful to us. Jesus answers in a way that I think helps us to measure the value of a church. And so when John's disciples come to Jesus with that question from John, "Are you the one?" Jesus responds. He says, "Go and tell John what you see and what you hear. The blind receive their sight. The lame walk. The lepers are cleansed. The deaf hear. The dead are raised, and the poor have good news brought to them." Go and tell John what is happening here. Not just on the surface. Don't go and tell John, "Hey, there were 5,000 people gathered around Jesus. He must be the one." Tell John what's happening at a deeper level. Tell John what business and leadership people would call the outcomes. What are the results of this ministry? If he knows what's happening here, he'll know the answer to his question. And it won't just be my say-so, it'll be based on evidence. And so go and tell John what you see and what you hear. Value the ministry based on its fruits. What if we did that? Go and tell the people of Elizabethton what you see and what you hear, First Pres. What would you say? What's happening here? Maybe a year and a half ago or so, in Thursdays with Jesus downstairs, we read what to me may be one of the most important books in the last 20 years or so. It's a book by Harvard sociologist Robert Putnam called Bowling Alone. And the book is about the decline of community engagement. And whether you read the book or not, you're probably familiar with the statistic that he cites in there, or at least some variation of it. What he noted is that about 29% of citizens account for about 85% of charitable giving, of volunteerism, of social engagement within a given community. 29% of the people, 85% of the money and the involvement in a community. And you've probably heard a statistic similar to that in one form or another. But then later on in the book, he gets to that question of what most accurately predicted who would be in that 29% group. Any guesses as to what it was? It was, did you attend a place of worship in the last 7 days? Notice it's not membership in a particular church or religious organization. It is regular participation. The church, this church, like others around us in the community and other religious institutions, community organizations, but this church, like others, is an incubator of the kind of citizen that makes communities function. You who are here this morning, like those at other places of worship this morning, you are the soul of a community. It might not be real flashy, but it's important. The character that we build here at church, week in and week out, in our ordinary worship life, that character is vital to the character and the soul of the communities in which we live. Go and tell John what you see and what you hear. That's not to say we don't do some flashy things here as well. Food for the multitude, Arms, Shepherd's Inn, Barocco Village, alternative giving. That list could go on and on. And we are an important part of the network in this community that takes care of the poorest among us. That's as a church body. If you follow that web out through the individuals among us in this church, we move out even more deeply, providing funds and volunteers and strength to initiatives like Friends of Roan Mountain, homeless ministries in Johnson City, Relay for Life, Alzheimer's Foundation, community arts, youth organizations. That list could go on for a long, long time. We go even further, giving support to Presbyterian Disaster Assistance, the Living Waters for the World, the Girls' School in Barocco, Kenya. Go and tell John what you see and what you hear. The poor hear some good news. The hungry get fed. The homeless find shelter. The sick find healing and support. The church is more than its programs, of course. What we represent more than anything else is connection with God. Here in this place, we both represent and we teach reverence for God, for the earth, for all of humanity. And this is something that is very, very difficult to measure. I think we can at least get a taste. What difference does it make for you to know that you are beloved by God? What difference does it make to a life to let go of the worry over whether or not you are good enough? What does it do to a person to be loved unconditionally? What difference does a sense of reverence make? To look at another human being, or a sunset, or a forest, or a field, say holy, sacred. What difference does a community grounded in worship and in the gospel make? Do you think that your friendships practiced here might also have significant impact on the health of your relationships and on your physical and mental health? The blind receive their sight. The dead are raised. I don't know how many flashy miracles we have experienced here. Probably just a few. This is a Presbyterian church after all, known for being the frozen chosen. But there is so much that is less dramatic. The slow, solid buildup of health. Spiritual, physical, emotional, social, psychological. Go and tell John what you see and hear. The people here are slowly becoming whole. today is the last day to turn in your pledge cards for next year. And so it is a chance for us to ask ourselves, what is it worth this year? $50 a week, 3, 5, 10% of your income, 1% more than last year. Church is worth more and yet somehow different than that, isn't it? It's simply not the right measuring scale. But money does matter, of course, and so let me suggest two considerations. First, growth in generosity is a part of the character of health. It's a part of the wholeness that we see. And our offering is simply one of the places where the rubber hits the road in terms of generosity. It's not the only place, of course, but it's one of the places. And so I invite you to practice generosity and to grow your generosity as you think about your contributions to the coming year. Second, our church budget, which is in fact made up of the money that you give, the budget provides the resources for all of these various ministries. And in many ways, the budget sets the limits for what we can do in a given year. When 2020 rolls around, we will do as much as we can do with the money and the volunteers, that's you as well. We'll do as much as we can with what we have. But what is this church worth? Sometimes I just have to stand back in amazement and look at so many fantastic people here. And I think of the ripples of care and good work radiating outward from this gathering. And I simply have no words. I will share with you that Sarah and I have made our pledge for next year, and we increased it from last year because we value the work of this community and we want to invest in what this church does. This is one of those places where the kingdom and the love of God become visible and tangible. And you just can't measure that. But you can go and tell John what you see and what you hear. Amen. This is our Gratitude Sunday, and I hope that among all the other things we experienced today, that a gratitude for this church family, for life, and for the world around us is one of those things that just overwhelms us today. And one of my favorite hymns for expressing that gratitude to God is our next one. It's number 37, Let All Things Now Live. Let me invite us to stand and sing together.
Creator, triumphantly raised, who
And now it's time for a minute for stewardship, though you just heard a superb sermon on this subject. I'm not sure there's a lot more to say, but that has never stopped me before. So I want to talk with you about two things briefly as the chair of the Stewardship, Finance, and Personnel Committee. The first is how we're doing, and the second is why are we doing it? Now, Brian actually answered that question, but it doesn't hurt to hear it twice. So how are we doing? The answer is wonderfully. Did you know that since 2017, the average weekly attendance in our church has gone up by 8%? This at a time when churches are struggling to stay alive. Did you know that since 2017, average giving at the church has gone up by 20%? And that means we in this place, have already done and are continuing to do what Brian referred to, which is to grow our generosity. As a result of that, last year, if you were here with us, you heard this, and I'll repeat it again. A year ago, for the first time in decades would be safe to say, your pledges fully funded our budget in combination with our investment income and some money that we receive every year that isn't pledged. We're going to close this year, most likely, in the black for the first time in I don't know how many years. This is remarkable. It's just absolutely remarkable. And so the thing about it is, we can say it's remarkable because as an organization, we're doing the right thing. We do want to talk a little later about why it's so important we're doing the right thing. For this year, however, I do have to let you know that of all of the money that we need to raise, $160,000, then plus we'll have some investment income and some other giving, we have yet raised, at this point, roughly a little more than $100,000. And the more important number for you to hear is that so far, 30 people or families have pledged in the church, and 27 people or families who pledged last year haven't pledged yet. That's almost half of the people who pledged last year haven't pledged yet. And by the way, we're all still here. That isn't because all those people have left us. On the contrary, our membership has also grown. So what that means is this. If you waited until this morning to turn in your pledge, please turn it in. Or if it has slipped your mind, I know life gets busy. We're going to give you a minute after I finish talking to fill out a pledge card now. There are pledge cards in the pew, and you will have the bonus of hearing Roddy play while you're doing that. So we're going to give you something. We're going to give you something while you do that. So please do pledge. Now the question is why? Why does all of this matter? Well, it matters is because we love this church and we love each other. And frankly, I don't know what I would do without this. Lee and I don't know what we would do without this church and without you. You in particular. We don't know what we'd do. But there's a bigger answer, and the bigger answer is that yes, we are the Open Arms Church. We are just so proud of the fact, as we should be, that we welcome everyone, that we tell everyone without exception that we accept you here, that we welcome you here, that we are not asking you to become someone or something that you are not. We are the Open Arms Church. But here's the thing. That's the beginning of your story as an individual when you come to our church. The question is, now that we've loved you, now that we've accepted you, what next for you? How will you become a part of the work of this church? Because what we're inviting all of you, whether you are here for the first time this Sunday or you've been coming to this church for decades and your parents and grandparents before that, what we're inviting you to do is to come here not just to be loved on, but to do the work. We're saying, join us, come here and do the work, the sacred work, the good work. Personally, I think there is nothing better than in life, than doing good work with other people. I think it just doesn't get any better than doing meaningful work with other people, and that's what we're about. So we come here once a week to worship. Why? Because God's just the kind of person who needs to be told every week how wonderful he or she is? No, because worshiping is our opportunity to attune again to God, to remember God, to remember what God stands for: wisdom, love, unselfishness, compassion. Show up every week. It's part of doing the work. It's part of doing the work, being here to attune to that again so that you can carry it back out into our world. Come every week to recharge your spiritual battery. It's hard doing the work. Most of the messages we hear are messages that are just a little bit discouraging these days and maybe just a little bit sometimes crazy. We need help remembering, or at least I do. Part of the work is for you to be a bearer of wisdom and compassion and unselfishness and love in our world, and not just for our neighbors, but for your families. Thanksgiving is coming to be the bearer of wisdom and love and peacefulness and balance in your family. Come join us in serving our community in all the ways that Brian mentioned. So, yes, we love you. We are so glad you are here. But what we are bringing you here and bringing you into our open arms to do is to join in doing the work. And part of that work is to pledge. We need your money in order to keep doing what we're doing. And we are doing so well. If you will do what you did last year, and perhaps a little more generously, or if you are new, if you will do something, we will reach our goal, and we will reach our goal perhaps even this morning. So please do pledge, and as you do so, realize how important it is that this church keep being what it is and doing what it does. Okay, so with that, there are pledge cards in the pews. A number of you have pledged, but we know a number of you have not yet pledged. Please put your pledge card in the offering plate if you brought it with you this morning. This is the time to do that. Or if you have not yet filled out a pledge card, please fill one out. And what I'd like everyone else to do is to pray. To pray for our church, that we might continue to be a source of healing and wholeness in our community and in our world. So if you have pledged, please pray. And if you are writing your pledge, can realize that that too is an act of prayer. And so, Roddy. And we invite our ushers to come forward and receive our morning offering.
Go and tell John what you see and what you hear. Oh God, give us eyes to see and ears to hear what you are doing already in this place, in this church, among us, and in this community. Help us to grow in our generosity and in our love for those around us, for those we are called to serve, and for one another. And help us, give us the words and the voice and the excitement to go and proclaim all that we see and hear. Use us and use the money and the gifts that we offer to continue that ministry into the future. In your name we pray. Amen. Our sending hymn, which can also serve as a blessing for us as we get ready to head downstairs and continue celebrating our gratitude for this community, is going to be hymn number 367, Come Ye Thankful People, Come.
Say
Beloved in Christ, as you go forth from here this day, charge is simply this. Go and tell John what you see and what you hear, that the ministry in this place may grow and continue to reflect the kingdom of God among us. And as you go forth today, may the road rise up to meet you. May the wind blow always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. May the rains fall softly on your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the hollow of her hand. Amen.